this weekend's going to be really busy, so we'll see how this. You need more room?
Oh no, I'm thank you.
Okay. All right. So the first thing I am going to do is I am going to do the tech certificates first, and I'm going to. I'm going to actually do the part of the assignment where you insert a new instructor. The only reason I'm doing this is that a lot of people seem to have had some issues with this. Not with the insert into person, not with the insert into instructor, but where you have the part where you do the insert for the different instructional areas. So I will go through the whole thing, but that's the issue is really just in the very last part. So I will do, we'll create a new person. This is in tech certificates. This is the actual. So insert into person, and we need, so let's go down to schemas. And I'm going to do person. I just need to remember what columns I have. So last name, first name. Email, address, city, state, postal code. This is a pain, but we have all these fields. I'm going to break this line just, and then it's just date added, right? And then I am going to just do the values. I hate when you break it. All right, so I'm going to just do, I'm not going to do the one that we did. Jones. This is actually one of my least favorite things, is making up bunches of names. JJ at Gmail. Address. Anybody have a just somewhere? 101 somewhere. With somewhere spelled right. Seattle. There may be some defaults in here. I don't remember. I need to revisit this. The state actually, whoops. State may actually give us an error. Does anybody remember it giving an error? It's usually pretty good to figure out the context, but state is a reserved word because you can return the state of the server. Is it running, not running, etc. You can return the state of different objects.
Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This was about inserting a new instructor. I was trying to figure out which question this is.
I have no idea.
I have it right here.
So insert.
I know you do person.
So we insert Melanie Jackson.
Okay, so that's
and then we. This is views. This isn't where we are. This is insert, update, and delete.
Manipulating data one.
Yeah.
Chapter 6.
Yeah. And the reason I'm doing this is that a lot of people have problems with the last part.
This one. 5 through 7.
Right. And it's not
5 through 7.
Right, 5 through 7. It's not this part nobody had trouble with. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this part. I have no idea.
So we're leaving the state blank.
Oh no. That will give you an error. The number of fields down here has to exactly match up there, right?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll do a current timestamp. And if I wanted to do, all right, so we will also want to add them to the login table. And the login table has login table key, which we don't need, username, person key, user password, and date last changed. Okay, and so one of the things you can do, a lot of people did my function, but you don't have to do that if you're only entering one person. I basically know that it is going to be, the username is going to be J Jones. I think I did it as all lowercase. J Jones is the user case. The person key, we could do the current, is it val? Curval is curval. Like that? Is there an underscore? I'm trying to remember the function. Is it underscore val? No. What? It doesn't matter whether. It's just curval.
Yeah.
Could you also do
it's
the,
just
could you also do the
Yeah.
select max?
You could do the select max. That actually would probably work also. I'm just going to do, so we need to say person, person key underscore sequence. And I don't think that needs to be quoted. You can tell it's been a few days since I did this, and that's not that's not something that sticks in my brain. Does it need to be quoted?
I've
Password
done it that way and it works.
without it quoted.
No, with a single quote. That's how I've done it. I don't know if it works with or without.
If it needs single quotes, it probably won't work without. All right, and then the user password, there's a couple of ways you could do this. As I said, the crypt function works. I think under functions, do I have my password one? I actually posted that one. I'm just looking for functions. There's crypt, but I do not see create password. So it somehow it just didn't come down.
I guess he just created the password for the community and then you asked us to create one for.
Well, I did, but I originally created one for here too. It just somehow it didn't copy.
You gave us.
I gave you the code for it. I mean, I could go get it right now. A real easy one. Let's see. And go down to functions. Create password. I'm going to script it. And I don't think there's anything in there that is specific to here. So I'm going to do Control A, Control C. I'm going to go back to my query text certificates. All of this is just to get to the one piece where you had trouble, which is not this piece. So I'm going to run that function. All that function does is it incorporates the crypt function. So now I can say create password. It just makes it easier here. And what I always, for these, what I do is that last name. There's the only reason I do the passwords like this is so that we can log in. In real life, you certainly wouldn't want to have some rule like that. I just want it because all you see is the hash. If you know that every password is their last name plus the word pass, you have a way to log in as anybody. Yeah.
That stuff you just did a moment ago.
Yeah.
Do we have to do that?
So if you want to use create password, you do.
Oh.
But it is in announcements in Canvas. I gave you the code for it. If you want, all it is, as I said, it creates a function called create password. It returns text. The language is SQL. We'll be talking about functions next week. And then all it does is it incorporates the crypt function. It just makes it easier to use the crypt function. That's all it does. It's what they call a wrapper. You could do this directly. You do not have to use the create password, right? You could just do that. But, you know, I thought that the crypt password's a little bit odd, so I just incorporated it, but you don't have to. And then the date last changed, I'm just going to do, again, current timestamp. Okay. Now, questions on that part so far? There's really nothing. Most people had no trouble with it so far. And then, you know, to make them an instructor, and I haven't run any of these yet. You could run them one at a time. That's perfectly fine. But I'm going to do insert into instructor. And then instructor just has, let's go down here again. Let's close the functions. That's community assist, but I want to go down to text certificates. Let's close the functions. I just need to remember what's in instructor. I think it's just 2 columns, right?
Yeah.
3 columns. So there's person key, hire date, and status key. And I'm just going to fake the status and say 1. Basically, the status is like value, active, inactive. Hiatus, I think, is a one. But values, and again, we can use the curval. Now, the only reason you have to do this is if you're running them together. If you ran them one at a time, you could go look up the value if you want. The reason, typically, like if you're building this for a form, you know, like you've created a form and you're going to process this, you want to process it all at once. And you don't want to have to keep going back to the database to search out the thing. So you can use this curval function to get the current value. Select max also works. It's a little, both of these are dicey if they're not all kind of contained in a single procedure or something, because it's always possible somebody could slip in there with another insert and you get the wrong value. Yeah.
That is supposed to be status key.
Which one?
Insert into instructor person key. Is it status key or is it status key?
It is status key. Thank you. Good eye. That's another pain of this, is that it all goes. If you do it all at once, it's harder to troubleshoot. So the usual naming conventions for these sequences, if you have sequences, is the name of the table underscore name of the key underscore sequence. SUQ. This is only works. This is the other thing I'll say about this. This only works if the key is an auto-generated number. If you created it as a serial, right? You gave it the serial function. If you didn't do that, if you are manually entering your keys, this is irrelevant. But you'd also have your key up here, so you would know what it is anyway.
Just to clarify, because it's automatically generated, you actually don't have to.
Well, in fact, it won't let you input it.
Right.
I mean, in the person table, you can't input it. Here you can't input the instructor key because it's auto-generated. Okay, so we've got that. The hire date I'm going to be also just current timestamp. And the last thing is status key, which I'm just going to make 1. All right. And then this is the part where people got, so we want to insert into Instructor Area. And I apologize because the names between two tables here are just ridiculously close. Instructional Area is a list of the instructional areas. Instructor Area is the one that assigns an instructor to one of those instructional areas. That's really bad naming because they're just too close together. It's really easy to confuse them. So, but all we want to do is get the instructor key and the instructional area key. It's a linking table. Isn't that a horrible? It doesn't matter. The nice thing about SQL is it's case insensitive. Although it might be a good thing to be consistent. Something that I have never been. All right, so when we look at instructor area, right, it has 2 columns, instructional area, instructor key. So the instructor key, we could do curval, but this time it's not person, it's instructor. Dot instructor key dot seq. Again, that naming convention is what they always use if it's auto named. And in the instructional area, I think there was like 3 and 4.
2 to 4.
2, 4.
2, 4, and 3. 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, because there were 3 areas?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the part where people got confused. They tried to put all of those areas somehow into one insert. And you can't. You have to insert each one as a separate row. Now, you don't have to say insert over and over again. You could do, yeah, so I'm going to just copy this, put it here, and then what was the other one? 3? There was 4, and there was 1 more?
3.
3. Oh, so we could do 3, and then 4, right? Or was there only 3?
Better than having them in order.
It doesn't actually matter. We'll say whether this is a different instructor, we'll say whatever. Okay, now if I'm going to run these all together, I really do need to have semicolons at the end of the things. So it looks like I do. So we insert into person, we insert into login table, we insert into instructor. All of that you guys did fine. This is the only place where you had some issues, and not everybody. You have to make a separate, you're inserting a separate row for every type, for every instructional area. Okay. And people would just instinctively felt, a lot of people, that should somehow all be one insert. And it kind of is. I mean, we're going to get 3 rows for that. Does that make sense? You have to do it as a separate row for each one. This is true with linking tables in general. If you have a book with 3 authors and you have a linking table between book and author, it would be the book key and then the changing author key. Book key, author key, book for all 3. Like the same book key, but 3 different authors. Right? That's how linking tables work. So I'm going to run this from the top. If I typed anything wrong, we'll have all sorts of errors throwing out. There is an advantage to running them one at a time if you're doing it for yourself, in that it's a lot easier to troubleshoot. So, will this work? Yes. So we can take a look and see, make sure that they're all there. Generally, you don't have to. If it says it worked, it worked. So I'll just do select star from instructor. I have no idea what the instructor, let's do from person. And let's do where person key equals, and we'll do a subquery, select max person key from person. That should give us the last person generated. Okay, so it's Jane Jones. There she is. My phone is null. Did I leave that out? I didn't put it in there, so it's just null. That's okay.
You reinserted it if it worked or not.
No, you'd have to update it. Remember, update is where you change existing values. So we did that, and then if we did, so hers is 403. So if we look for, just real quickly, I'll do select first name, last name. Okay. Do I want to do this? Let's just check to see if they're there, I guess. I was going to, so she's there. Let's look into instructional area. Select star from instructional area. I was going to do a join that brings it all together, but that'll take two. Instructor area. Where person key equals 403. Where instructor key, I don't know what the instructor key is. All right, so let's do from instructor. I need the instructor key for the other one. Okay, so her instructor key is 11. Okay, so see, these are her instructional areas, 2, 3, and 4, and this is their instructor key. That's what a linking table looks like. Totally unreadable for humans, generally. And it's just numbers. Relational databases are written for computers. Questions on that before I go on to views or? Does that make sense? Everybody's okay? As I said, the only reason I did this is that I think there was several people had some confusion about how to do this part. Are there any questions about tables and temp tables and that? Is that all kind of clear? I did do a little video on that, which I think I did in my office bedroom at home. And I don't know how good it is. Talking in an empty space is not my forte. Talking to the computer just seems weird. All right, so I'm going to go back and open up a new query on Community Assist. and we'll do views real quickly. I don't know if it'll be quickly, but I'll try. And then we'll do other things. So first thing, you guys ready? The first thing in the chapter and in the assignments is to create new schema. Do you guys have any idea what schema are before I begin? For one thing, it's an extremely overused word. Because schema, on one hand, means the structure of a table. A database schema is the structure of the database, the layout of the database. An XML schema is a structure of it's an XML document that describes the structure of an XML document. I mean, schema is used everywhere. In this case, schema has to do with collections of objects. And it is an ANSI standard thing. I was trying to get a copy of the ANSI standards, but they want like $70 for it. So you can get general descriptions, but to get the actual ANSI standard, that's what they're doing. But anyway, schemas are part of this. And schemas are collections of objects. By default, all of your objects belong to the public schema. But you can create your own schema, and it's actually probably a good idea to do so. There are some nice things about schemas when you get into security. You can grant people permissions on a schema, and you don't have to grant them to the individuals, right? If they have the schema permissions, they'll only have the permissions granted to the schema, right? You can break things up. So there's a public schema. It makes some sense to make a schema for things like, say if it was for students, say, in the tech certificate, for instructor. They could have their own schema. And inside of those, you could write the views and stored procedures and functions that they will need to do their job. Does that make sense? You can control how they access the database through schema. The other reason why building your own schema can be useful is that the public schema gets really crowded. Our databases are not huge by real life standards. A lot of databases have hundreds of tables and views and objects. And if they're all in public, that can get pretty messy. So it can be used as an organizational thing. So in Community Assist, I don't remember all of, let's do, I'm going to create a schema, I can spell it right, and I will call it Employee Schema. Naming, again, is kind of tricky, but this is actually all there is to creating a schema. It's really easy. So I'm going to run that. Okay. Now, if I go to schemas and I refresh, we have two schemas. Actually, do we? Yeah, we do. Okay. Did it do it? Why did it not do? There they are. I think I refreshed the wrong schema. So we have an employee schema and a public schema. Inside the employee schema, you have all of the public schema and employee schema. You have all those same folders where you can add things. Right now, there are no tables, there are no views, there's nothing in there right now, but the schema is there. So all these basically folders are empty. Also, just it's not really relevant for us, but there are a lot of folders here. If you go into preferences, you can hide all the folders you don't want to see, right? Because there's a lot of folders you may never mess with, right? Or only want to see once in a while. Like foreign tables is pretty weird. Foreign tables are really where you're linking to tables from a different database, probably a different server. Other things too that you might not care about. So anyways, we have an employee schema. All right, so let's create a view that goes into the employee schema. You guys have a good idea what a view is. Okay, a view is a stored query. And it's called a view because typically you're creating a query that provides somebody's view of the data, the way they would look at the data. Human resources might have their own views of the data. An employee would have, the manager would have certain views of the data. Views are basically ways of looking at the data, and they're stored queries. So I'm just going to do one that'll show the basic employee information. So I'm going to select person first name, person last name. I'm going to do a couple of other things here too. I'm going to alias this as, I guess, just first name. You could alias it as just first. And you can alias without as, although I probably should use as. Person email. We'll just make that email. I might put, actually, before I even do this, let's do their employee key. You can put them in whatever order you want. So they've all got, let's look under our tables. Oh, that's because that's an employee schema. So under employee, I think it's just combines employees like a lookup table. And then there's employee position, and then there are positions. So let's look at employee position. So we just trying to remember position key, employee key. Let's do the employee position start. So we'll do position name, which I think I'll just leave, and employee position start, and I'll lower that, although it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do start date as an alias. All right, so those are the fields that I'm going to do. Let me move this down a bit. So this is our select. We have to do all the froms. Before I do that, I'm going to do create view, and I'm going to say employee schema dot, and then we'll just call this employee view. Does that make sense? And then we're going to do as. I was doing the select. I was trying to think it through. When you create a view, as I said, it's a stored procedure. It's a stored query. So this is the view. It's going to belong to employee schema. This is all you have to do to make it belong to employee schema. It's just do employee schema dot, and then give it a name. As always starts the view. It's basically like employee schema dot employee view is an alias for everything that follows. Okay, so then I need to do my joins down here. So from employee, and then we'll inner join, although you could just join. Inner join person. I'm going to do the using person key just because it's faster. Inner join let's see, employee position. Using employee key. Do you guys remember the using? No? Okay, I'll explain. It's like the on. Yeah. It's a little bit simpler than on, right? Normally you would say on person dot person key equals employee dot person key, which is perfectly fine. And this usually doesn't work everywhere, right? It doesn't work in a lot of other DBMSs. It does, I think, work in MySQL, but it doesn't work in SQL Server. I don't know Oracle. I have to play with Oracle. I haven't played with Oracle in years.
But on works everywhere.
On works everywhere. Yeah, on works everywhere. What?
It works in my seat.
This one does work in MySQL, but I think that was maybe, I don't know about Oracle. As I said, I haven't played with Oracle for a long time. It's faster, it's nicer, but it's not, it doesn't work everywhere. But it's doing exactly the same thing. The other thing about it is it only works if your primary key and foreign key have the same name. It doesn't work because you can, and one of the things MySQL tends to do by default, if you use the model, is it names the foreign key differently than the primary key. And if you do that, then you have to use on. So I'm going to interjoin on position and using position key. All right. So that's long, but it's long mainly just because of the way I laid it out. Yes, it does need parentheses. Thank you. They're cooking downstairs and it smells good.
Getting better.
What?
They're getting better.
Yeah. Sometimes it smells horrible, but a lot of times it does smell good. All right, so any questions on this? So we're creating a view. And if you want to create it in public schema, you just give it a name, right? Everything defaults to public. So we're doing it in employee schema as select. And then we've got, we're basically just doing a query. And one of the neat things about views is that if you do have a complicated query, you never have to write it again, right? Because you've got a view for it. So I'm going to select from the top to the bottom.
From create view.
Yeah, from create view. Now, if you want to test, it's actually not a bad idea to just test the query before you make the view. So if I run that.
From select.
Yeah, so it says that there's interjoin position, job position. See, it's a good idea to test it.
Job position.
I named it job position because position is a keyword. Doesn't like employee position start. I bet it's start date. So again, I'm just testing this, and I gotta get it all. Okay, so that worked. Okay, so now if I create the view, it says it was query, or it was successful, right? It doesn't actually return the value. And if you look in the over here, and if you go down, so I'm gonna close tables, and we're gonna go employee schemas. Notice there's a thing called views down here. When I open it, we've got an employee view. And when I open that and look at the columns, it'll tell me what the column names are. Okay. So that view now exists. And the way you access a view, it's just like a table. So I would do select. I'm going to do star, but we'll do it. Select star from employee schema. And the reason we have to do employee schema is because we're actually in the public schema. Employee schema dot employee view. Your view didn't work, or
Yeah.
it could be. What error did it give you?
No employee, basically, I ran on line 12.
Did you move back up to?
How far did it go up?
Well, I'm wondering. What I'm wondering is if we're in. Yeah, let me look. I think we're in text certificate. Yeah, I mean that's easy to do because we started there. Yeah, and then I moved. I opened a new query window. One of the things actually that I do, I don't care for in the Postgres admin that we get, the PG admin, is
So, just to be clear,
instead of saying just use,
are we in?
we're in community assist. Instead of saying just use community assist, you have to open a separate query window for it. And use it throws an error if you do use, which I'm not sure why.
What does it, which platforms are on?
What? Oh, so typically you could switch database context by just saying use. Like if I said use text certificates, it should change the context to text certificates, but it just throws an error. It doesn't support the word use. And every other database that I know of does support use, so that's one of their weirdnesses. Actually, they might support it if we did it from the command line. I'm not sure. PG admin doesn't seem to support it. Okay, questions on that then? Here's another thing I want to show you about it, and then we'll do a couple other things. If I were to do, let's say I just wanted to say person first name, person last name from employee schema, what would happen? They're aliased, and when they are aliased, you cannot get access to the actual underlying column names. It will say that they don't exist. That's another really good thing about views, at least from the database administrator's point of view, is you can hide the structure of the underlying tables. You can hide the structure and you can hide the column names. Makes it a lot harder for a hacker to hack.
So that doesn't work because.
It's because they were aliased. And the aliases are now the column names in the view.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to do this, so up here we aliased them to first name, last name.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do this exact same thing with first name, last name, it'll be just fine.
But the employee schema employee views is correct. It's just
That's fine. It's just that as far as it is concerned, the alias is now the column, right? So again, as a database administrator, that means you can hide the underlying column names. You can hide the underlying table names and underlying table structures. It is not uncommon that people only access a database through views and stored procedures, right? The working, because it protects it. You create a layer of protection. It makes it a lot harder to hack. Okay, so I'm not going to do lots of these. You could spend a year developing that data layer for people to use. Does that make sense? Schema, we made a view for the schema. Does it make sense what a view is? I'm going to talk a few things more about views, and then some views are updatable. Do you know what that would mean?
You need to go live update.
So, well, actually, views are for the most, how do you spell updatable? Views for the most part are live. right? There's no data in a view by default. A view is just a filter on the table. So it's always pulling the data from the live database, except for materialized views, which we'll look at in a minute. But the normal view is always pulling it from the table. So it's always live data. Update means, updatable means that you can insert, update, and delete through the view. That's very rare. And actually, I would discourage making views like that. I would do it as through stored procedures or something. You can only update a view if it only, if there are no joins. No calculated fields. So you can't use any functions or things like that. What were the other limiting things? That's not how you spell calculated. There's some other limiting factors. I'm trying to remember what they are. Basically, the only time you can insert, update, and delete through a view is if it only talks to one table. And I think you can alias, but I'm not sure. It may not allow aliases either. You did. If you remember what I said about that, I'd have to look it up. There's a place on, if you look at the views in the documentation that talks about updatable views. So if I make a view, just on person. So if I did like select or create view, I'm going to do it in employee anyway. Employee schema dot people view as, and then basically I'm just going to do person last name. Actually, let's do this as email view. And what we'll do is we'll just do person last name, person first name. Now I don't know if this will be updatable though. Person email. We'll try it. From person. And that's going to be my view. The reason I don't know that this is updatable, anybody, I spelled last name wrong. All right. The reason I don't know if this is updatable is I may have left out some fields that are required. I don't remember what's not null and what's null. So it's probable that this won't work. I may have to add some other fields. So let's try select star from employee schema email view. This should work just fine. So I want to change, let's change J to Jason. I've done that a few times, different points. So let's see if we can do update employee schema email view. I bet it will allow the update. It may not allow an insert. Set person first name. I didn't include, this could be a problem. Set person first name equals Jason. So let's try their email, I guess, where person email equals janderson@gmail.com. Hopefully I won't be changing too many people's. So that worked. So that's an updatable query, at least for updates. It may not accept inserts because there's several fields in person that we didn't include that might be required. So you can update through the view here. Yeah,
I aliased mine and it worked.
it did work. So aliases will work. Okay, that's good to know. Let me do, though, I'm going to change the query some. Thing is, let's try to insert in here first, too. I don't know that it'll work. Insert into employee schema .email view. Value, well, so let's do there's no key here, which is a bit problematic. So I want the person first name, last name. They don't have to be in exactly the same order as in the thing. Person first name and person email. I don't know, as I said, I don't know that this will work. Values. So, good last name. Brown. Good first name. What?
Jackie.
Jackie. And so let's do JB. Okay, so I don't know that this will work. Let's see if it does. So we have to do, so it won't insert. Which one? Is it only the person date added?
This is two wells now.
Yeah, no.
I might just do the first one.
Right. So the person, well, let's see. Let's look at the person table. So tables, that's wrong schema. I want to go to the public schema. Tables. So we want person. Columns. I don't think it says what's required there, does it? So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to script the table. So that's not null. Last name's not null. First name is null. Email's not null. Phone is nullable. The date added is not nullable. So actually that's all.
Yeah,
It's just the date added. Yeah. Yeah, so what we can do is we can alter our view. So when you want to alter a view, I am going to make two alterations to it. So actually, I'm going to, sorry, I went down here. Let's do a Control V. I'm going to alter the view. And I'm doing alter and create. There's also alter and replace, create or replace. Right, so you can do create or replace, or you can do create, or you can do alter.
Where are you altering it? Sorry, I'm trying to think.
I just put the alter in front of it.
No, where in the code, like
What do you mean?
the order.
Like how far up?
Oh, does it matter?
I don't know. You know,
So I'm doing it after the create. I pasted it again. The only reason I pasted it again is I want to keep a record so that when I post this, it has all the variations. So any view, now you could, in the first time you make it, it has to be create or create or replace. Right? You have to do one of those two. Afterwards, you can do alter. You can also do create or replace, but it won't always work. Create or replace will allow you to add to the view, but it won't allow you to subtract from the view. So if you say create or replace and you want to remove a column, it'll fail. Then you need to do alter. If you're just adding stuff like we are, create or replace would work fine.
Isn't replacing also kind of removing one and remove another one?
Maybe, but it doesn't work. I mean, logically, it seems to me like it should work, but it doesn't. There's a limit on create or replace. For whatever reason, allows you to add to, but not to remove from. Yeah. Computer languages are artificial constructs, so. And that may well be something that's only in Postgres. I don't know. I'm going to add a person. Is it city? Person city? Which is not required, but I'm going to do something with it to show you something. Person what?
Date added.
We need person date added also. Yeah.
Person address.
There's person. I don't care about the address. For this one, I just want the city. I think.
But
It's not there. It's not there. I'd have to do a link, and then it wouldn't be updatable. Never mind. Trying to think of a condition that I could do here. Anyway, you could alter this and this will work. I think we're going to have to do this address as a separate view. Can you think of a where clause that would be limiting here? I mean, we could do where person date added greater than or less than, or we could do for whatever bizarre reason. Let's do where person last name, like, what letter do you want it to start with? J? Do we have lots of J's? We have Johnsons and stuff. All right, so I'm going to do a percent there. So I'm altering the view to have these. So we alter the view. It doesn't like as. Did I not copy this right? Why is there a syntax error by as? It's weird. Alter should work there too. So we've got this. Notice we've only got people that start with J's.
What did you change alter to?
I changed it to create or replace. Because we didn't subtract anything, we just added stuff. But alter should have worked too. You always have the option of dropping the view and then adding it again. This is a stupid criterion, but I want to show you for a reason.
So you have to put create or replace view, and then it'll know whether to create it if it already has it or replace it if it already exists.
Right. So if it doesn't exist, it creates it. If it does exist, it replaces it, but as I said, with that constraint that it won't replace it if you cut things from the previous view. So the reason I did that and with the J stuff is I want to insert. So we're doing Brown, Jackie, hotmail.com. And the thing that we need to add is the date. So I'm just going to do current timestamp. This should insert through the view. Because I didn't put it up here. Date added, right? And it's person date added? Or was I inconsistent? I'm going to break that line. Yeah, so it should add now. Now, one of the things about this is because their last name is Brown, they don't appear in the view, despite the fact that I've added them. If I go to person, they'll be there. Right, if I do select star from person.
Or if you person first name, like
Yeah.
Add it through the schema, but you can't see it.
Right, and it's possible to be able to add things through the schema. I'm just going to do where person key equals select max person key from person. I think I wrote that one up above somewhere too, but so there's Brown, and she's in there. Okay. But she's not viewed. You can't see her in the view. Because the view is only showing people with last names of J. So the point of all of this, the reason why I did all of this was to show you that there is another thing you can add to the view that will prevent that from happening. That will not allow you to enter anything that would not be visible in the view. And what you would do is just, I'm going to add one more thing with check option. The check option says we will not allow you to insert or update through the view any value that is not visible in the view. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
It won't allow you to insert or update any values through the view that you could not then see. Right? So, like, it wouldn't have allowed us to do Brown here because actually Jackie could be either, but she or he is not visible in the view. So that's what the check option does. So let's do this. So I'm going to run that, and it did it successfully. And I'm going to just do basically the same thing, but let's do another Brown, but say this is Nelson Brown. Why? I don't know. I'll change this to NB. Okay. And this will fail because it violates the check option.
Also shows another null.
Yeah, well, we're getting a null from the person table. This is the phone. But yeah, it won't allow us to do this because it would not be visible in the view. You don't have to do it with the check option, but you can if you want, because you could use views to do things that you maybe don't want somebody to do. Right? If you can insert through them or update through them. They could update something that they can't see. These are kind of minor problems because, as I said, most views are not updatable. Once you start joining tables and stuff, there's the ability to update goes away.
So like if you create a view for like, for example, like an HR team or whatever, and there were new employees added after the fact, so it wouldn't be that new and those new.
Well, so the view doesn't have to. I mean, as I said, my view has a really stupid where clause, where a person last name like J.
Right, but just in general, like if a team got A through Z, all the current employees, then
Right.
a week later, like 10 more employees.
They would see them all.
It would still real-time update.
Yeah,
the
so
views.
by default, a view is not, there's no data in a view. It's just a filter that you're putting over the table.
Mhm.
So it's coming live from the table. So if you add new employees or you remove employees, it will be reflected in the view.
Okay.
Now, this is, I think the last thing that I need to do for views, which is that there is such a thing as a material view, where that isn't true. So you could create a material view where you actually keep the data in the view. The reasons that you would do this are basically for speed and efficiency. But it means that your data isn't live, right? It's not being pulled directly from the tables. My example for this is usually like Amazon's sale tables. They've pre-joined. That's what the view would do for you. They've pre-joined all their data, and they put it into a separate table that's not actually attached directly to live data. And they put all sorts of indexes on it so that you can see what you're trying to buy really fast. Because if you had to do all of the inner joins and stuff, particularly when you have billions of records, as they do, it could take a little bit. It could take, even on a really good mainframe Oracle database, which is what Amazon has, it could take minutes to see that data. And most people these days, if it takes minutes, they're going away.
10 seconds.
Yeah. So they pre-join all this stuff and index the heck out of it. And it basically allows them to bring it up close to instant if they have a decent connection. The drawback of that is that you could buy something that doesn't exist because the table isn't live. And that happens actually all the time on Amazon. Now they update, they refresh that table pretty often, like probably every few minutes. But it is possible to purchase something that's already sold out. And in their mind, and probably they're right, it's better to apologize to a few people than to lose millions of people because of slowness. So that's what a materialized view can do, is it can pre-join all this stuff. You can put indexes on it. It's faster, but it has the drawback that it's not live. Right? Yeah.
So when adding to the created view, if you're adding a new, it automatically goes to your main table.
Right. The normal view automatically goes to the tables. It's just a query, right? So this is automatically going to pull from person every time. Whatever is live from person is what it would do.
But when we added like Jackie Brown.
So it would add that table, but we excluded it because we're only looking for last names that start with J. Does that make sense? It's still in the actual underlying person table. Typically, you wouldn't do something like this, but you might do something like you want to see, you might have a view of only the companies in Seattle. So what that means is you may not want to let them add some company that's in Bellevue through the Seattle view. Does that make sense? Because they wouldn't be able to see it if they successfully added it. They might have it in a separate view for that. All right, so let's do a materialized view. There's really not a lot of difference to it. I'm going to do, what would be a good, so nothing in Community Assist is big enough for this to make sense, but let's do it anyway. Let's do create or replace. I mean, you can do this every time. And we'll do, should we do it in employee schema? Since you don't have to, you could do it in public too. Let's do it as grant view.
Sorry, is this a material view example? Or?
It is, so I need to write material in there too, don't I? And I need to say view, and I need to say material view, which gives us a big first line. As. So again, a material view is going to populate with data. It's actually going to store data. Regular views do not store data. So I am going to say what data we're going to get here. So we're going to I'm going to do like a grant application key. Is that what grant application date. I'm trying to remember the fields, so if I get them wrong, let me know. And we could certainly alias these. Grant type, name, person, last name. We could do their first name too, but I'll just do their last name. Grant application amount. Is that enough? Probably. From person. Actually, we could do with whichever one we want. Join grant application. Not gramped. Again, I'm going for fast here. That's why I did join instead of inner join. And then we need to join grant type. Also, just to emphasize that this may or may not work. Is there anything else that I want there?
That you're current wrong on using.
I do indeed. Any join that is not labeled is an inner join by default. Let's see if I left. It's good to have a semicolon, and the environment actually works without. That actually looks fine, right? So I'm going to create this view. Whoa. Boy, did I put material in the wrong place?
It's materialized.
Materialized, thank you. I wondered why it didn't turn red. It still doesn't like it. Create or replace view.
This just has create. Material at different level.
Shouldn't matter, but let's try it again. Yeah, didn't like replace. Weird. Anyway, so this is a materialized view, and what that means is that the data is actually stored in this. So just to do this as an example.
Can you see that on your grid on the left?
Yeah, it should be here. And I did it in employee schema. So we got way up here. We've got, if I refresh here, we've got employee view, email view. Is there a place? Oh, materialized views have their own folder. So up in the employee schema, materialized views have their own folder. So just to show that it works, and then we'll be done with this. I'm taking up most of your time. I didn't mean to take all of your time. So I'm going to do select star from Employee Schema grant view. Okay, so we've got going down there. 54 rows. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a record to grant. So I'm going to insert into grant application. And let's see if I remember all the fields that are there. Grant application date. Grant, well, that's the view, but grant type, name, person key, grant, so I got grant, actually it'd be grant type key. Yeah, amount, grant application amount. And I think it has a thing with a, let's break this so it's on one screen. It also has a reason, right? Grant application. Explain. All right. I think that's good enough for that. The point of this is this one will not show up in the materialized view. Yeah. No, it's current date time. Is that right? Current timestamp. And then grant type key, we're just going to do one. Person key, randomly 50. Grant type of amount, they're going to want $400 because they're really hungry. Because one is food, and two is so the explain is lunchtime. At which point I would probably deny the grant, but let's see if that'll insert. Why did it not go? I pressed F5, but nothing happened. Let's do. So it inserted, but when I do this, and I look at the messages, it's still 54 rows, right? And it's not at the there. It's not in the bottom, right? It's the current one is not there. So you have to refresh the employee schema grant view to get that. And I just forgot the key word for that. Oh, okay. Is it select refresh? Just refresh. And we want it to employee schema dot grant view. If that is correct. So that says it succeeded. So let's run this again. And if we look, we have 55 rows. So if we go to the bottom of that, Okay, come on to the bottom. There's Rent, Claiborne. That's 800. I didn't do 800. Is it? It's farther down. 400. Is one medical? I thought it was one was food. It's possible, but it is now. No, that isn't now. Where is it? Is it at the top? 2017. 2019. Here it is. I don't know why. That is the max key. I do not know why the keys are not in order. It's indexing on something else. And because I actually did current timestamp, it actually has the time. Whereas the others are just the time. But we materialized it, and then we refreshed it. And so what you could do, I mean, if you were doing something like Amazon, is you would automate the refresh, and you would refresh every few minutes or every few seconds, maybe.
I think they added, but what was the 50 for again? Like on values, current timestamp 1, 50,
50 is just the random person key.
Okay, so it wouldn't be in there. I got it. So you got it worked.
We needed a person to do. I mean, you need to have a person, and there's like 132, 130 so people in there. So I just picked in the middle. This could well be a person that donated because they need money for lunch.
Mine says February 14th. I use current time, so I don't know if that matters or if I'm looking at the wrong one.
You might, so it should have one way we could look at it to be sure. I mean, basically, we could do where grant. Well, so actually, grant application key is it in here? It's not in here. Yeah, it is. Grant application key equals, and we could do the max. Select max grant application key from our grant application. Let me break that so it's on one screen. And that would bring us up just that one. Except that needs to be there. And that needs to go away. So then that brings it down to just the person that was just added. You can do, queries based on a query. The view can be, you can add where conditions to outside the view, right? So we're calling the view, but we're also adding a where criteria. We only want to see this part of the view, the person.
Yes.
So February 21st, 2019.
I don't think mine says February 14th. It came out that
That just,
the application.
it probably means that the clock in the computer is wrong. Or maybe, if not in the computer in general, in the virtual machine. Because that's where it gets the time. It just reads the computer clock. If the computer clock is wrong, the time is wrong.
That's what threw me off. I was like, I feel like I have time stuff.
So questions on that? Again, materialized schema are really useful for efficiency, but in general, you don't want to do just because it means you're duplicating your data. It's not live, which means that your query answers don't reflect the live table. But again, when you're doing commerce, sometimes that makes a lot of sense. And any of these can be gotten rid of by just a simple drop, right? Drop view, and you give it the name.
Is that pretty common, you would say, in most e-commerce companies, or just like something like as big as Amazon?
I think it's fairly common if you're doing a lot of concurrency of a lot of people. I mean, think of how many people are on an Amazon site at any one moment. But that's true of a lot of business sites. It depends on how big your catalog is, so the things that, these are actually things that we don't deal with much here, but the things that have to do with performance are how many records are in your tables, how many joins. Every join costs, there's a cost that comes with joins. When you normalize a table, which you should do for data integrity, it means breaking things up into more and more tables, which means more and more joins, which means more and more time to bring it all back together. So a materialized view saves you all the join time. You can also apply indexes to your view. We'll talk about indexes in a week or so. That will speed things up, which you wouldn't necessarily want to apply to the underlying tables because indexes speed up searches, but they slow down inserts, updates, and deletes. There are reasons for doing it. Yeah, it's actually a process called denormalization. And again, the price is that you sell things to people that don't exist. Apologize on the fly. Yeah. Somehow I do sometimes too. Although I've always assumed it's because I often go for something where they say there's only one left.
Yeah. So inventory feeds also don't always.
I tend to, the books that I sometimes go after are things that are not widely, they don't print a lot of them. And so are there any questions on views?
Yeah, how about the visit of Wall Street?
The what?
On Wall Street, the stock markets, are they using the active views?
I have no idea. I would think that they would probably be fairly active. I don't know that they would be using, it depends on what they're doing, I guess. So there probably are periodic views that are just run every so often to show you where the data is at a certain point. I suspect that the machines that are making their buying and selling are doing it directly off the raw data. They're not bothering with views. They have all sorts of complicated AI algorithms in there to say, well, this seems to be undervalued, this seems to be overvalued, this seems to be...
If you remember back in the 90s, it was real common that you either couldn't get real-time market quotes,
right,
or you had to pay extra for it.
Yes.
And now if you've got an account anyway with Schwab or whoever, you get real-time quotes.
You can get pretty real-time. You still tend to, though, need an account like that. So like in the typical web quotes are usually just a few minutes off, not like hours off, but just a few minutes off that quote for the things. Yeah, I do remember that. Actually, though, in the 90s, things on a computer could take 20 minutes, and you didn't think a lot about it. Downloading a file or downloading stock quotes might take a few moments.
Something else I find a little interesting, if I micromanage my stocks, I shouldn't, but so if I look at it at 1 o'clock when the market closes,
yeah,
and then refresh it like every 30 seconds, it's interesting to see how the incoming trades and stuff vary the price up to about 20 minutes after, 15, 20 minutes after market close.
Yeah, I haven't done, the only thing I have in the stock market is my 401k. And the only thing I know is that I lost $25,000 last year. Yeah, but it won't bring back 25,000 in a year. Yeah. I'm tempted to take it out because I do want to retire in the not too distant future. So what was I doing? I was going to get out of the virtual machine if I can.
So that's the lecture.
I think, yeah, that's the lecture. Oh, I just maximized it again. I want to stop the video. So I will try.